invocation, and it'll be offered by Chaplain Major George Jones, and Country Music Hall of Famer, isn't it? George Jones.
That's another drunk.
Oh, that's the other guy. And so and we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance by Supervisor Goodman. So those of you that would like to participate in the invocation and the pledge, you may stand, please.
Father, your word tells us in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 356, to honor you with all our heart. Lean not to our own understanding, and in all our ways acknowledge you, and you will guide our paths. And Father, that's what we ask you for these leaders here today of this great county, to guide their paths, protect our law enforcement, our justice people, and provide and oversee these proceedings today. We ask that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. So let's see here. Let's get the party started. Item number 1, call to the public. So this is for those wishing to address the Pinal County Board of Supervisors. Need not request permission in advance. Action taken as a result of such public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Does anyone wish to address the board? Oh, good, okay.
Mr. Chairman, our honored supervisors, I'd like to comment in response to the ongoing past agenda item of an invocation, and specifically the very plausible, smooth arguments by our friend Charlie Zoom, the Satanist from the Satanic Temple of Phoenix. One of his most compelling arguments, as it fell on my ears, was his appeal to equality. The appeal to equality. He asked for fair and equal representation for all constituents, said this is not a space for Christian privilege, it is a space for all of us, and advocated allowing all religions and non-religions to give invocations. So, thinking of that since last October, what was the advocacy for equality for? Was it personal equality, individual equality? No, we all have the 3 minutes, which I'm well into mine. It was equality, it was an appeal for equality for Satan, right? Is that a familiar appeal? Is that a familiar argument? It could be. Consider the first idea to the human family. Satan in the garden, he's tempting our ancestors to disobey God. He says, if you do, you will become as gods. What could possibly go wrong with that? Satan himself in heaven, as revealed in Isaiah 14:14, he says the aspiration of his heart is, I will be like the Most High. Problem, he hasn't yet proven his equality. God has spoken through history, through Christ, through Scripture, through uncounted martyrs, hospitals, orphanages, through the witness of creation. How has Satan spoken? So, in summary, I would offer that it's premature to appeal for the equality of a chosen alternate deity to the God of creation, the God of Bible, until that deity speaks as God has. Until that deity speaks, let's hold off on the appeals for equality. Let the deity speak. And in the meantime, as Christians, let us not deceive ourselves. The scriptures say that all know the truth of God, only some refuse to confess it. So let's be bold. Let's not be apologetic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. And would you please state your name and general location of where you live, please?
Yes, my name is Luke Myers from Coolidge.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address the board?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Board, my name is Dave Coward. I'm from Gold Canyon. And I was here about in December, and I was talking about the COVID numbers. And at that time, the day I spoke, there were 288 cases the prior day of COVID. Yesterday, we had 2,075. Our 7-day average when I spoke last was 228. As of yesterday, it's 1,413. Our deaths are, just yesterday, were 13. It gives us a 7-day average of 6 per week. So I just bring this up because, COVID is not over. And we really need to take it seriously, because if we don't, this virus doesn't care what our philosophies are, how much money we have, or whatever. And the longer it's in our society, the more it's just going to keep going on and on and on. So I'm just asking the board to please address this issue and do what needs to be done to mitigate this virus. So thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Anyone else? Oh, this is a quiet crowd today. Look at that. All right. Seeing no one else, we'll move along here.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
when would be a good
I'm
time
sorry.
to take a point of personal privilege?
well, how about now?
Okay, cool. So I just want to address, got lots of emails and contact, as did the sheriff and the sheriff's department, regarding a large, once in a lifetime event that happened this last week, and the question of whether or not the sheriff's department should be out there to protect it. And I believe the sheriff's department took the stance that no matter what event happens, it has to be kept safe. And not even being political, I mean, if it was a bunch of movie stars or whatever, or some kind of an event, the alternative to not protecting it and having an incident happen, then that is going to be terrible, and they're going to get even more criticism. So I just want to commend the sheriff's department for being out there, being non-political, keeping everybody safe, and a thank you to our sheriff's department.
Thank you, sir. All right. Item number 2, presentation to recognize the retirement of Ms. Patricia Taylor, Pinal County Public Fiduciary, in recognition of 35.75 years of dedicated service to Pinal County for the extraordinary care and compassion given throughout her career to our most vulnerable residents. Mary Ellen Shepard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mary Ellen walks up, I would just say what an honor it is to give this tribute, and had the pleasure of working with Patricia for many years, not as much as she served, but taking care of the needy here in the county. But she brought along a lot of leadership with improving the quality of services, with being cost effective with them, and caring with compassion to both the clients and her team. So I wanted to congratulate her and thank her for all of the time that we've got to work together, and very happy to do this tribute. Thank you.
Chairman McClure, members of the board, Mary Ellen Shepard, Deputy County Manager. How do you thank someone who has taken you from crayons to perfume? It isn't easy, but I'll try. I thought the line from that coming-of-age song to Sir with Love was appropriate for today's recognition because, frankly, that's what Director Patricia Taylor has helped to happen here in Pinal County. The Public Fiduciary's Office is relatively new. It was created in 1974 by actions and part of Sandra Day O'Connor. And in creating this office, Arizona is the only state where the public fiduciary has the three roles, that being the guardian, the conservator, and the administrator. And while Patricia doesn't date back to 1974 in her role here in the county, she has been here since the mid-'80s. And to give context to the growth since that time and what crayons were like in the mid-'80s, I'd like to take us back to those times where the means for communication were the bag phones, otherwise known as brick phones, and that transportation, if we were lucky to have it, was a vehicle obtained from surplus. In this case, they were privileged to use a station wagon. And in order to help their clients move, literally, there would be the driver and the two other team members with their arms holding the mattress held above the wagon as they went through the county on roads that may or not be there to assist with that transportation. It was a time of big hair and big dreams. It was a time where there were no computers. Desktop computers literally covered the desk. If you were so fortunate to have one, they did not. They used typewriters, and the typewriters were pretty special because they had whiteout actually built in. They would do their ledgers by hand and go to the courtroom where it would be the judge in his chambers smoking the cigarette, and they would do the business of the county and the clients. These were the days where individuals like Patricia came to work with caseloads larger than what they have today, where they were committed to protecting the most vulnerable among us. And while times have changed over the 30-plus years, the dedication, the commitment, the absolute desire to make sure here in Pinal County, when we say wide open opportunity, we don't leave anyone behind. We are grateful for Patricia, for her sacrifice, for her commitment, and we are certainly going to miss her in her role as Director of Public Fiduciary's Office. And I believe we have a video that helps capture the story of then to now that we'd love to share with you today.
My name is Patricia Taylor, and I am the Director of the Pinal County Public Fiduciary's Office. I started in this department as a receptionist. I had been working for the police department prior to that, and this has been my life for 34 years. It became a passion. You want our Pinal County residents to have the best life that they can have, and I couldn't do this job without my staff. Everybody here is very passionate about their job. We have 176 clients. We become guardian and conservator for the most vulnerable people in Pinal County. So which means we make decisions for them, day-to-day decisions as well as at times, life and death decisions. We manage their money, we pay their bills, we go see them every 3 months. At times, we even have to see them monthly, just depending on the situation. And we make sure that they're getting the care that they deserve. The majority of the clients are elderly. We do have developmentally disabled, and we have some seriously mentally ill. We get referrals from the courts, we get referrals from Adult Protective Services, and from citizens. We are of last resort, but there's times when we have to be involved. We'll petition the court, and then the judge will appoint us after he reviews the case. We have clients that live in nursing homes, group homes, a couple that even live on their own, in their own homes. Unfortunately, they don't have family because they've outlived their family members. So if there is family involved, either they did not want to become their guardian or they were not appropriate. So we don't have many clients that have active family members in their life. We are their family. It's been exciting, but as it's dwindling down, I'm feeling nervous. This is my work family. This is the people that I have known for some of them over 30 years.
It's kind of like our work family. Everybody in this office has been a work family. We come, we share, we work, we guide each other.
It's like an end of an era. You know, we've all just been together for so long. This is all we know, you know, and it's going to be tough. It really is.
So it's going to be a big change, but I'm looking forward to it and the new adventure. I don't know what that might be.
So in a job that doesn't get the thanks it deserves, it would be my honor and privilege to ask all of you to please give a big round of thanks to Patricia Taylor. And Patricia, did you want to come up and say a few words?
Speech. Come on.
Ooh, this is tough. Just want to thank everybody. Thank you. Baby. I told Mary Ellen I wasn't going to do this. So, anyways, I just want to thank everybody that has supported me, my staff, Leo, Chris, and Mary Ellen. I couldn't do it without you guys, so thank everybody. That's all I have. Thank you.
And then, if I may, with your permission, we have a small gift to share with Patricia. And then I know she would appreciate a photograph, if that's an option.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Patricia, come back up.
Oh. You want us down?
Please.
Time to go.
Yes.
And looking right here in 3, 2, 1, and again, 3, sorry, okay, 3, 2, 1, and one more, 3, 2, there we go.
And while our board members are going back to the dais, we have public fiduciary team members here, and I wanted to give them an opportunity, if I may, just say a few quick words if they cared to.
Members of the board, and Leo, Mary Ellen, just want to share with you that working with Patricia has just been a remarkable experience. I started with the agency in '96, and Patricia was pretty hesitant about accepting me into her team and her group. She was somewhat of a supervisor at the time, but after that, it's just been a remarkable journey, and we really appreciate her service and the support that the county has provided to her.
Thank you. Oh,
I'm sorry. Ernie Appel from Coolidge and with the Pinal County Public Fiduciary's Office.
Since '96.
Pardon?
Since '96.
96.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Goodman.
No, I just, over the years, I've worked with various fiduciaries throughout the state, and the job that you guys do is amazing, because you are really, truly the family to those individuals, and it's been a cool experience for me to have over the years to witness how good of a job all the fiduciaries do. And Mrs. Taylor, I appreciate you taking the time and effort to really own it, make it part of you, and make it part of your family. And you could tell through all this and through the love that your coworkers have for you. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Good.
Sure. I mean, all I can say is thanks. This is amazing that we have employees that make that truck for 20, 25, 30, 35 years. I don't know how you did it, but we thank you for that type of dedication, and it is what kind of separates Pinal County from other places. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you for your caring compassion for our employees. Thank you, Director Taylor, and thank you to the Public Fiduciary's Office.
Thank you very much. All right. Item number 3, the presentation of certificates of service to employees for 20 and 25 years. Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today we have the privilege to honor 4 of our long-serving employees. 3 of them are not present. Well, actually, all 4 of them are not present, but one has a better half who is going to receive the certificate on behalf. So first we have Chief Brian Harrell with the Pinal County Sheriff's Office, who started back in 2001 as a deputy sheriff and was promoted along the way, all the way to a deputy chief sheriff today, and a great man to work with. And then we have Mark Carlson from Public Works, who also started in December of 2001 and has been promoted along the way, started as a general operator and is today an operator senior. And then at 25 years, we have Martha Reel, who started back in 1996 at the Copper Quarter Justice Court and who has been a justice clerk there for 25 years. And then last, we have Ben Cook, who has been here as a sheriff's deputy since 1996. And we honored his wife, Shelley, back in December as well. And I think that she's here to pick up for him. Maybe not. Okay.
You're batting 1,000 right now.
Okay. All right. So 4 for 4. Congratulations to everybody, and thank you to everybody on the list.
And moving right along, Mr. Liu, County Manager's Report.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to mention that we have a follow-up that we're calling Systematic Pathway Session. And it's a session that's a follow-up to our business development and workforce development event that we had back in November. And so this is a deeper dive. We're going to have Mark Gaspers, Senior Manager of the Government Operations for Boeing's Southwest region, and then Leah Palmer, the Executive Director for Arizona Advanced Manufacturing Institute. And this one will be virtual and it will include breakout sessions. It's going to be on February 3rd from 8:30 to 10:30 in the morning. And for those, if you didn't get the invite or you wanted to register, you can contact Joel Millman or Joel Villegas. We're both on it, or Pinal Partnership. So register for that if you'd like.
All right, thank you very much. Let's see, moving along here. Purchasing Division Report. Tara Peterson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. I am Tiara Peterson, your purchasing manager for Pinal County, and this is your purchasing report for January 19th, 2022. The board is requested to approve the following purchase request per Pinal County Procurement Code, Section PC1-347, governing sole source purchases over $100,000. For a purchase in the amount of $600,000 with Mutual Link Inc. for Mutual Link software, and the using department is PCSO. And that concludes your purchasing division report for January 19th, 2022.
All right, thank you, Ms. Peterson. Is there a motion? We'll go through the process. Is there a motion? No? Is there any? Okay, how about, would you like to discuss something, Supervisor Kavanaugh?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question on the multi-link software. It's a single source, and I understand Deputy Chief Matt has some information and representatives. It's important that we inform the public about these types of purchases, and so that's the reason I'm asking this question.
Chairman McClure, members of the board, I've invited the owner, Mark Guthrie, and Andy Williams to answer any of the questions you have and explain what they do as it pertains to PCSO and also on a national basis.
Certainly.
Good morning to the board. My name is Mark Guthrie with Mutual Link. I'm from Maryland, and I'll let my colleague Andy introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Andy Williams. I'm a Client Solutions Executive with Mutual Link.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Chairman, could you please explain to the public what it is that this software does? It's I think $500,000 or $600,000. Why it's necessary and why it is a sole provider. This wasn't bid out. You're the only service provider that's been approved by the federal government or the state or so on. So I think it's important to be transparent to the public about how these expenditures occur, and if you could explain that for us.
Yes, sir, Mr. Kavanaugh. This starts with the safety of our students and school staff. So that is the primary mission of the legislation for the state of Arizona. And it's about building safer and smarter communities for Pinal County. And the legislation has been written to protect the privacy and security of the students and staff, as well as automating school safety. And if I could just really perhaps summarize the three things that we're going to be doing for Pinal County. First is the expediting of 911 calls. So in the event of an active shooter or a serious situation, automating the 911 calls. Number two is to help automate the mutual aid communication channels amongst the first responders. So a big challenge amongst all first responders. And then number three is to accelerate the data interoperability in the context of situational awareness. So think text, video, floor plans, other sensor information that will help accelerate situational awareness for first responders to bring safety and security to the schools and to the community. And so the way the legislation has been written in the state of Arizona, Mutual Link and you mentioned it, Mr. Supervisor, is unique in its ability to configure all those three areas uniquely to support the mission of Pinal County and the state of Arizona, and through our patents and security capabilities sanctioned by the federal government, DHS, FEMA specifically, authority to operate, we are uniquely positioned to deliver on the expectations of the state's legislation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So do I have a motion to accept?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept the purchasing division report as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? No? And board's pleasure? Say for approval.
All in favor, say
Aye.
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 All in favor,
Aye.
say aye.
Aye. Yeah, that one. Yeah, you know what I mean. Okay, aye. You knew what I meant.
We did. That's what we said it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chairman, I couldn't determine if everyone voted on that. Can we do, if there was any opposed?
Okay, let's do a roll call then. Make it easy.
Supervisor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Supervisor Goodman?
Aye.
Supervisor Miller?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Surtee?
Aye.
Chairman McClure?
Aye. Thank you for coming and explaining that. Appreciate it.
Look forward to supporting your mission.
All right, item number 6, consent. All items indicated by an asterisk will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda unless a board member, county manager, or member of the public objects at the time the agenda item is called. Let's see, I've already had a request to pull item U and V by Deputy County Attorney Kevin Costello. Are there any other items?
I'd like to add O.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Item O by Mr. Surtee.
And J.
And J.
Just to speak on it.
Okay. By Supervisor Goodman. Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Aye. Oh, well.
No, you're voting. You're voting already? Okay. Okay, we're done.
Letter
Aye.
aye.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve consent items A through Y with the exception of I, J, O, U, and V.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Are those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Was that clear, Natasha? 5 ayes.
Just for clarity, if we can still state the opposition just in case there is opposition.
Those opposed? Hearing none, items passed. Thank you. All right, let's go to item I.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if anyone is here from the South Florence Fire Department. Is there anyone here from South Florence? So, Mr. Chairman, this is a portion of the grants that the Board of Supervisors distributes. It's a portion of the $100,000 that each of us are delegated to help certain nonprofits in our districts. This particular grant allocation will help pay for equipment for the South Florence Fire Department. The South Florence Fire Department covers the area south of Florence and the areas around the monastery and those neighborhoods which were not covered by fire service unless you had a subscription. So they've had some fires down there. The houses have burned. A gentleman started his own fire department, and so
That's cool.
This goes a long way. They were squirting water on fires with hoses that had holes in them, so they'd get about 80% out the end, I think. So I wanted to call this to the attention of the public and know that there is a fire department in place and developing for South Florence. With that, I would move that we approve item I as presented.
Second.
Can I ask a question?
You may ask a question, Supervisor.
He started his own fire department. Is it a district? Is it a fire district?
I have to, Mr. County Manager, I know it's a nonprofit. Is it a district yet?
We'd have to double check, Supervisor, but
let's let this gentleman answer the question. I believe he probably has the answer.
501c3, whatever.
Come forward.
Good morning. I'm not sure how to address you fellows, so Chairman, Deputy Vice Chairman, and Supervisors. My name is Larry Vincent. I'm the individual Mr. Kavanaugh met with us last August. A year ago, we started a volunteer fire department as a direct result of being informed we had no coverage. I've only lived in the area for 2 years. I moved from Mesa out here, so let's say I was a bit aghast when my neighbor's house caught fire and the Oro Valley Golder Ranch district responded to my neighbor's fire. I'm a design engineer for Boeing in Mesa, and so we're constantly bombarded with safety and fire conditions at the Apache plant. We embarked on a very lengthy path pursuing some legal counsel. On November 2020, we filed the Articles of Incorporation through the Arizona Board of Commission. December, we applied for 501c status. January, unfortunately, we had our first fire down at Cactus Forest in 79. We had just procured our first truck from the Bowie Fire Department that they had gotten a grant from the Gary Sinise Foundation, and so they were able to surplus a truck to us very affordably, and that started the wheels in motion. We met with the county. The county now has this in the 911 system. So when there's a fire south of town on 79 all the way to the Tom Mix Memorial, that's tied into the county's CAD system, and we have a dedicated phone line that they call, and that dispatches us. In the last year, we've acquired 5 vehicles. The Chiricahua Trails Fire District and Chiricahua went defunct, and they donated 2 vehicles in April. We sell T-shirts, anything we can to scrape and scrap. We do I think it's the last Friday of the month, the third Friday of the month here in town, where they do the vendor thing, where we just try to make people publicly aware that south of the canal, we have some kind of fire coverage. We have 14 individuals who are properly geared, albeit hand-me-downs, coming from the hills of Kentucky. Hand-me-downs were new clothes where I came from. So we graciously and gladly take this, anything that folks do to help us. We were afforded a grant from the State Fire School, and they sent 5 of us to the Scottsdale Fire Academy for a week in September. From there, we met 28 different chiefs, captains from Gilbert, Tempe, Phoenix, and on and on and on. And from that, we were actually donated a air compressor to fill up our air packs for our fire gear from the Mormon Fire District. So to answer the question that I think you started with is, are we a district? We are not. Trust me when I tell you there isn't a week, I would dare say a day in a week goes by that somebody doesn't ask that, or Lavona at the firehouse doesn't send someone to give us a call. We're working with the monasteries trying to get a school started out off a different road. We met with a building supervisor to help give them an adequate assessment on what they need for some fire coverage for safety and protocol. So we're very busy. This started out as, hey, let's get a truck and see what we can do to help. And here we are a year later with 14 folks in front of a county board meeting. I didn't even know these existed, so forgive me. But at the same time, we have had an outpouring of support. We have volunteers that live on every east-west road, whether it be Kelvin, Cactus Forest, Bartlett, or Paisano. So we have guys scattered amongst those east-west cross streets. And we've even, I believe his name is Jim Allen with the county building inspector. He lives in Valley Farms, and they have no fire protection. So we've kind of extended it to 6 miles west of 79, 11 miles east of 79, and 20-plus miles up and down 79. So we cover 375 square miles with a 911 call and a whole bunch of people that care. Only because this was done prior to our inception by community people that called their neighbor, or they called a cattle farmer, they called anybody with a trailer and a truck. Fortunately, we met with Supervisor Kavanaugh in August, and he appeared to be a little shocked that we had started this because that was one of his campaign issues. So we felt like we were fulfilling his campaign agenda, and we hadn't even met yet. So he asked, his associate had asked that we attend today to answer any question that you guys may have about us. We basically live off donations, and when they approached us and wanted to know what they could do to help, we were free to inform them what we could use. So we submitted a list. I don't know if you folks have. Sorry, I talk with my hands. We submitted a list of all the things that we could use, and you folks graciously considered that. And so I just wanted to take time off work today to come share with you how important this is to all of us that live in that sector. I will tell you that Mr. Chuck Connett is the emergency services manager. When we started, let's say 16 months ago, he was my only contact at the county and has been a cornerstone of support prior to meeting Mr. Kavanaugh. And the first words out of Chuck Connett's mouth was, "When are you going to start a fire district?" And we hadn't even gotten this thing off the ground. So it's important to us. We do not know how to transition from where we are to get to a district. From what I read online, that's an ominous challenge right now. But we're just trying to do something. Just so you guys have some statistics that may or may not matter, in the last 12 months, we've had 5 house fires, 9 brush fires, and 3 vehicle fires. For a volunteer, who would have came to those had we not been here? Now, I wish I could say that we saved all those with paint and personal effects intact. I will tell you our one big win was a house on Andy Lane, that it was still standing erect, and I would say they got 75% of their, we were actually able to get it out before it damaged the whole structure. So we feel like we're doing a small part. Our motto is serving our community one call at a time, because that's what we do.
Thank you.
If I may?
Sure.
I just a lot of great information there. I'll digest all of that. But just to be clear, you're a 501c3?
Yes, sir.
100% volunteer?
Yes, sir.
And for lack of a better description, our GIS people have kind of mapped out an area that you serve.
No. We mapped out.
You mapped out.
When we went to the county, when we went to speak with Mr. Woodhall, and at the time Captain Hunter Rankin was a communications officer at 911, after the fire at 8705 South Pinal Parkway, prior to this, the only way the community got notified of a fire was 180 people were on a group text. And if you don't think that's a logistic nightmare, let me assure you that it is. So after his fire and 180 people on these, you're trying to do something positive and your phone keeps going off, we went and sat down with the county. And we told them, this is the area, just by looking at your GIS map and seeing where the concentration of residences are, that's already a year old. Who knows how much that's changed since then. So, no, we defined that area just as, because of where our membership, our volunteers live. No matter what road they live on, they have an apparatus at their residence right now. So should a fire occur on Cactus Forest, we don't have to run from Paisano to Cactus Forest. We've got a guy there in a couple minutes, and then the rest of us respond.
Okay, I think I have a good, clear picture of what you got going there.
Sorry, tell me to.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to ask the question.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Good.
Thank you. If I might, first of all, I feel the pain that you're talking about. That's something that, particularly in my district, we have a big shortfall with fire services, major fire services in such a condensed area that's highly populated. So I feel your pain and what you guys are trying to accomplish. I would suggest that as you're working towards the fire district and everything else, that you work with our staff. We have an excellent legal department that can assist you or give you some ideas and direction, I'm assuming, as how a fire district works, what you need to do to organize that. It sounds like you even have some kind of a geographical map that could actually benefit that process of where you need to go.
We've been in contact with Pam Villaria.
Okay.
And she's given us quite a bit of information, which is really truly the reason we step back away from it a little bit, because it's a monstrous undertaking. Yeah. And I've been the last 18 months with spearheading this effort, And I can tell you that I'm not as young as I used to be, and there comes a point that none of us are, right? But it comes to a point that it's very difficult for people to grasp and understand how many hours a week we put into this behind the scenes, just certifications, insurance premiums, vehicles, maintenance, gear. And so for us to try to take on the onset of what it takes to get this district process going is, we're a little intimidated by the mountain of paperwork that it takes. I mean, it's a big challenge, and I don't understand all the legal ramifications of what parcel has to touch what's parcel and leapfrog and all this. So we're trying to get to where we are right now. Our mission statement for 2022 is we're at a plateau that we have 14 folks and a lot more that help but don't want to be part of the fire department. We have 5 vehicles. And we want to take 2022 and just establish a plane of response so that we can get better at what we do and then take a bite at this apple on this district when one of us can take a little breather and inhale a little.
Keep plugging along.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right.
You're on a good start.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. A lot of folks don't even know we exist. And I'll put this out because this is a public meeting. We implore people to call 911 first. Because up until now, they had no choice but to call their neighbor and their cousin and their friends. If we're in the CAD system at the county, when they call us. I think I counted 17 calls that we've gotten from PCSO, and they call. We just did a fire in Coolidge, at the edge of Coolidge, end of October, where they couldn't get anybody to go, and we responded. Unfortunately, Chief Dillon brought a water truck. So we're becoming known, and the local fire departments are assisting. Until we got our compressor from Mormon Lake, Chief Dillon and Coolidge, their city, they were filling our air packs for us. So we're getting a lot of support.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you for what you do.
I'll be quiet.
We don't expect you to be quiet. We want you to be.
We don't want you to be.
Supervisor Kavanaugh, are you good with that?
Yes, thank you.
So,
I'll restate my motion to approve item I, as presented.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion's approved. All right, thank you. Now, let's see. How about item J? I don't remember who called that out.
I did, Mr. Chair. So the reason why I called it out and wanted it to be pulled is maybe to talk a little bit about how this is a result of some strategic planning that we started and began probably 4 years ago or 5 years ago in some of our processes and things that we wanted to see happen throughout the entire county. And so I'm excited to see this one because it does expand our broadband. And particularly on the east side, where we have some gaps, that's where the beginning is all going to take place. This is building of towers that we own. So for me personally, and I believe seeing some of this stuff that was beginning the planning process 5 years ago become a reality is really a big plus. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to call this out. And this is just part of that big strategic plan moving forward. And this is what good government does. So, thank you. So with that, if I can make a motion, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
I believe you may.
Thank you. That we approve item number J as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion's approved. Let's see, item O.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss and get some answers on this. It's very large and vague. A lot of people are under the impression, I mean, we're going into what, year 3 of this, and a lot of people think that people are not trying because they have all of this potential relief there, but then I'm going to go another direction. So if we do okay this, then what makes someone eligible and who decides, and how do we prevent fraud? I see more and more folks are trying to game the system, and so how do we prevent that? How is this whole thing going to be rolled out?
Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chairman Surdy, Heather Patel with Finance. I would first like to point out that the item before you is simply an update. Back in early 2021, we accepted both of the awards for this program. So we wanted to basically share that the first award under the CARES Act was for $14 million, and that was specifically to provide rental and utility assistance to families who could prove that they had a hardship as a result of COVID. And due to the magnitude of that, we enlisted the help of DES, Arizona Department of Economic Security, to help us with that program. So they have an online system that is available actually for all of the counties with the exception of Maricopa and Pima. And that online system is where people can apply for the services, provide all their documentation, and that DES goes through and qualifies them. In the very beginning, there were some fraud situations, and they put different things in place so that they could eliminate that. And that was something that was happening nationally.
So DES is who is administrating this?
They are doing this for us, yes. And so from March of 21 to December, we spent all of the $14 million. And then we now have our second round of funding that came directly from the U.S. Treasury, and that is for $11 million. And so we're now moving into using that pot of funds. We've spent nearly $1 million of that already in the end of December to now. So it is still certainly a big need. People are able to receive assistance for 12 months. So I think, so if we look at, there's a little over 2,000 households that were served, and getting the assistance for a year is what has this program been doing.
Do you know if there's any, I mean, this goes back to before I was even seated on this board. I had another position, and folks were coming to me and say, hey, my rental is running out. What am I going to do? I'm going to be evicted. Folks have to know that eventually this is going to run out. You're going to have to take care of yourself someday. So is anybody making any attempts to let these people know that this isn't forever?
Thank you. Yes, I think that there is different programs and services and things that DES is sharing with them. So if you look at the beginning of the pandemic, which we'll just say 2020, the start of that, if people started having or not being able to pay their rent because they were out of work, when we started the program in 2021, they could go back and catch up, but they could never go over the 12 months. So I think with them applying and DES sharing the rules of the program, that they were basically put on notice that this is all that we can do for you. So then they were essentially needed to figure something else out. So as far as formal education programs, like I said, I think DES does the referrals. There's different organizations that are providing these services that help people figure out what they can do. We, of course, have our WIOA program for job services. We have different contracts with vendors to help people find jobs. So if the loss of a job was the situation, they are referred to Arizona at Work and our WIOA program to do that. Likewise, if they weren't able to pay their utilities, then they are provided information to the utility companies that can offer services, especially to lower income households or households with seniors, and different programs like that. So all of these things have been in existence. I think perhaps some people got behind because it was too much with the pandemic, and so they're able to at least have the security of remaining in their homes.
Satisfied there?
Yeah, we do want to be compassionate. We just wanted, a lot of the citizens want an answer, how come I have to work and other people don't? And so, yes. Anybody else?
Supervisor Kavanaugh, I see your hand
Thank you.
flapping over there.
To Mr. Surtees' point, you had mentioned the money comes directly from the U.S. Treasury, but really that's from the U.S. taxpayers, and that's why we're seeing this inflation, because the federal government is creating money either electronically or printing it. So the question I get from constituents is those who are receiving the money, is it like unemployment where they have to have proof that they're applying for work, because we have thousands of employers looking for help and almost record unemployment, and those two aren't meeting? Is there a work requirement or a work search requirement to receive this?
Thank you, Chairman. Supervisor Kavanaugh, there is not a requirement for that. The only real requirement is to show that they have a hardship as a result of the pandemic. So, certainly unemployment benefits have halted. The moratorium for getting people kicked out of their rentals has ended. So I think that some of the people who are applying are seeing that their options are decreasing. So, but no, there is not.
I would tell you that I know of some families that were doing very well before the pandemic. And you've got two parents working and you've got three kids in this one particular case. And when the pandemic hit and the kids could not go to school, someone had to stay home from work to take care of the kids because they could not afford childcare. So then they couldn't work. So then, the one could work, the other couldn't, and they'd trade back and forth. And I know this one family was very careful that they paid for their home this entire time. They got behind on utilities, but were able to keep their home. And I know that that's not the case for a lot of people. And so these programs are out there to help those kind of folks.
Does this pay for, if you have a mortgage, does it pay for that or only rental?
This is only for rental.
But I use that as an
Yeah, I know.
example. I mean, it might be people that are renting an apartment, but the same
Yeah.
goes forward.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Goodman.
Thank you. The other question I have is that goes along with some of the comments that have been made. What about the cost of rent? Has that increased? Have we noticed that?
Thank you, Chairman McClure, Supervisor Goodman. Rent has drastically increased, yes, and it has been on an upward climb for some time. So it's a well acknowledged issue throughout Arizona, but in Pinal County as well, that rents are hard to attain.
Yeah. Okay. That's another contributing factor.
Well,
to all of it.
I have a friend in Phoenix that's trying to find a place, and the studio is $1,300.
But if I might, but to the point of what Supervisor Surtees brought up, is that just making sure. I mean, if they've already, and with any program that's out there, there's always going to be abuse, right? But if from what you're telling us, they've caught that and they're putting in mechanisms. They've already put mechanisms that's actually going to trigger that, and then even do some kind of penalties or anything else against the individual that is actually taking advantage of the system. And I think that's really where a lot of the concern of some of the comments that we're hearing from our constituents is that it's the handout part, and rather than a help up. That's probably with some government programs is that we always get that mentality that it's a handout rather than a help up, and that we just got to make sure that we're staying within that form of help up. So that's the only comments I've got on this one. So, thank you.
I have one more comment. At least people are being paid now, because remember back when rent was being waived and they couldn't collect it. There's a lot of business folks that bought fourplexes and they were getting no income because they didn't have them paid for either. So they were also, they lost mortgages as well. So during the suspension of payments, that was not a good thing to do either. So this is a little bit better than that.
Yeah, I agree.
Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my my thoughts on what has been delivered to us today is the lack of, or very loose or broad statement that there's not a requirement, or the requirement just says you have to have been affected by COVID. Is that how you? I mean, that's kind of how you stated it. Is that correct? And I could argue that I was affected by COVID. I don't think I deserve any money from the government, but that's kind of a subjective instead of an objective point of view. And I don't expect Heather to fix this for me tomorrow or any of us, but I do think it's interesting that that it's really not maybe regulated like we thought it ought to be, or like I would have thought, because I would have thought it would have fallen in income bracket, some other factors that may have made you eligible, not just the fact that you could come in and sign a statement and say, COVID affected me, and I rent. So am I eligible? Yes. I mean, that's the impression I've got from this whole conversation. That's the scary part. But anyway, if you can opine on that.
Thank you, Chairman McClure, Supervisor Miller. What I can say about that is that they do require some sort of documentation to show that hardship. So if it is a loss of the job, if it is because they had to stay home for the child care situation, then those are the types of things that they are looking for. But true, I mean, anyone could,
Yeah, exactly.
make certain things look in their favor, and that's unfortunate, but not really anything that either us or DES can necessarily control.
Our attorney is making faces at
Are you waving? I'm sorry, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you,
Speak up,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, members of the board. I was, while we were talking and discussing this, I was pulling up the rental assistance program from the state to see if I could answer Mr. Miller's question. And under the eligibility tab, they require an eviction notice. This is the documentation that you must supply.
Okay,
An
great.
eviction notice, a utility shutoff notice, past due rent notice, past due utility notice, and other evidence, and any other evidence of unsafe or unhealthy living conditions or household instability. The renter or member of the renter's household has to be impacted by COVID. The renter's household income is less than or equal to 80% of the area median income. So those are some of the requirements. This is just briefly just looking through it.
And that makes a lot of sense, and thank you, Mr. Keller, because I just have to get my head around it.
That's good to know.
Any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you. Curiously, when did the money run out? I had a neighbor who I learned was having difficulty. He had COVID and I think lost his job and so on. Talked to the landlord, and I told him about this program. And I think that was in late November, early December, and thinking everything was cool. Well, this weekend, late night, I saw him moving out. So I'm curious as to, how long it takes to secure the funds, to at least secure the promise if someone has a legitimate need, and when did the money run out this past time?
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Kavanaugh. The first round of money, although we used it up, they moved straight into the second round. So it was never a point where there was no money available. It's unfortunate that he did get kicked out, but there are a few things in place. If the landlord is not willing to work with DES and accept that, then that's something that we can't manage. It also could be that he may not have been able to provide the necessary documentation. There's lots of reasons why. I do also know that the online system can be difficult or cumbersome for a lot of people, and to be able to get into the system, that could have been something that hindered him from moving forward. It's hard to say.
Do we have anybody within the county who can help navigate the systems?
Yes, thank you very much. We do actually have someone over at our housing authority who can help people get through that system. So we have all that information on the housing authority website and who to contact. And yes, so if anybody has any issues, they can reach out to them.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Oh, good. Okay, so do I have a motion for item Mr. Reveles. come forward, please.
And I noticed that, as usual, it's labeled discussion, approval, or disapproval. So again, thank you for letting the public be part of the process. My question...
Mr. Would you...
My name is Roberto Revelis, resident of Gold Canyon, and my questions are related to the concerns expressed from the board on this once-in-a-lifetime challenge, COVID being a once-in-a-lifetime challenge for most of us, just like a visit by a former twice-indicted president is a once-in-a-lifetime visit to our county. Both of them, I agree, require public response. And as a taxpayer, I am proud to support the use of county taxpayers' resources to protect the public safety, including the public health. And so, as one who participates in local volunteer efforts to raise money and contributes to helping the homeless, those who are hurting in our community, I had a question that if we face the need to extend help to our fellow residents, that we ought to be prepared to ask all members of Arizona's congressional delegation to support the allocation of funding rather than having the burden carried only on the backs of the Democratic members of Arizona's delegation. I urge our county to please get unanimous support, including that of Republicans who refuse to vote for the assistance that's made available today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments, concerns, questions? Going once, going twice. Great. So do we have a motion for item 0 or item O, please?
With the clarifications that we have, I would move that we approve item O.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item U. Mr. Costello, where are you? I don't get a choice in that. That's I just sit here. I don't know.
Chairman McClure, members of the board, Kevin Costello, Deputy County Attorney. Both item U and V are requesting approval for James Brazelton and the law firm of Dickinson Wright to represent the county in potential condemnation actions required for some road improvement projects. I ask that these be pulled from consent to notify the board. Mr. Brazelton notified me recently that he is filing another action, a condemnation action, on behalf of the city of Maricopa. When these condemnation actions are filed, they have to name the county as a defendant because the county will potentially have a lien for unpaid property taxes. That requires them to name the county as a defendant in their condemnation action. Since, in essence, he is technically suing the county in one action, it is a technical conflict of interest for him to represent the county. It is really just technically a conflict. There is no difference in position. It is something that the board has the ability to waive. And so in order to approve these representations, the board would have to waive those conflicts. And if you have any questions.
What would be I hear your opinion. What would be an option?
So certainly the options would be to choose another firm and a different representation and not approve Mr. Brazelton or the firm of Dickinson Wright. If we went out for a different firm, same or similar conflict could arise with any law firm or practitioner that handles condemnations, because in any condemnation, you have to name the county for this reason. Also, there would be a delay caused. We would have to find different counsel. They would have to do a conflict check for any other different conflicts for specific property owners or things, and that would push our process back. And then the other option is to approve it, waive this conflict, and move forward.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pretty simple, and I have a real problem with serving two masters, is how I see this. I don't know what the intensity of these lawsuits and these legal actions are. Condemnation can get kind of ugly, and I don't know if you can expand on some of that. If you understand where I'm coming
Certainly.
from.
Chairman McClure, Supervisor Miller, in this instance, the county's interest is a potentially property tax lien. I looked at this particular property that they are about to file on. There are 2021 taxes due for just over $2,000. The amount of that tax that would be attributable to the strip that they're taking for the road improvement that they're doing, it's Porter Road in Maricopa, would be some fraction of that. When municipalities or the state condemn property, they're legally required to pay taxes due. So there really isn't a difference in interest between, in this case, the city of Maricopa and Pinal County. We're interested in collecting taxes. They're required to pay the taxes. It's just because we have a lien, they're required to name us as a defendant in this action.
So they haven't paid the taxes for 21 on this, and it is past due.
Yes, the half that would be
Okay.
due. Yeah.
And after the legal actions have taken place, win or lose, one of the two parties is going to have to pay the tax.
Yes, the taxes will have to be paid if they are successful in the condemnation, or if they resolve it through some sort of settlement of the condemnation. That will result in the payment of at least the portion that is due on
the strip of land.
The strip of land.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, if I could, if I could just add on to what Kevin was saying. In these situations, when they do condemn that property and they enter into, usually you try to work towards a stipulated settlement agreement for the value of the property.
Sure.
As part of that settlement agreement, there is usually a clause that requires them to pay X amount of dollars, at the closing to the county in lieu of taxes that have been accrued and so forth. So our involvement is really just a review to make sure that language is in there. So we don't really view this as a conflict. It's more of a technical matter because they're naming the county in that matter. We have used this firm and this individual several times in the past. So they are familiar with working with the county and particularly with Public Works in our condemnation actions for roadway purposes. So that's why. I just wanted to let you know that this is not something really unique and new. It happens occasionally where they are representing somebody else in the county because they represent multiple governments in the condemnation stuff. A lot of governments are too small, as are we, that we don't have dedicated staff that handle our own condemnations to do that.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. I'm good.
So are there any other, any other questions? Mr. Kavanaugh.
I do have a question. So I'm thinking to myself, so our maximum exposure is a couple $1,000 we could potentially lose if, as a defendant, if a judgment is rendered against us? Is that?
Okay. Chairman McClure, Supervisor Kavanaugh, I would say we do not have exposure to lose $2,000. We are named as a party defendant because the judgment will have to reflect the taxes due and the lien that the county holds. The city of Maricopa that's filing this action is required to pay taxes when they do a condemnation. This is really a technical aspect. We're required to be named because statutorily we have a lien on the property, and that has to be dealt with as part of the resolution of this lawsuit. The county will not lose any money no matter how this action is resolved.
Except for the bill that we'll get from the outside counsel.
Not as part of this action. They're not going to bill us for this. They will bill us if we approve and have them do a condemnation on our behalf.
Okay.
So, no matter whether this condemnation, the condemnation by the city of Maricopa, whether that moves forward or not, the county has their processes in place. We will collect our taxes.
I see this as a conflict, but it's really good language in the contract. Is that fair to say?
It's conflict in name only is the way that I would view it, because their firm is representing and they're naming the county in an action that they're going to file, and they're also going to represent the county in other actions. It's not unusual for us to waive conflicts for certain firms. We've done this in the past where, they have, a pending action against the county, especially in tax situations where, again, statutorily, we just need to be named so that we do collect the taxes on that.
Okay, thank you. So, does that answer your questions? All questions are good? All right, do it. So, can we do U and V together? Do I have a motion for items U and V?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve items U and V as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion's passed. Thank you very much. I believe that's all of those. Let's see, let's recess the regular meeting, the Supervisors' regular meeting, and let's open the Flood Control District Board of Directors meeting, just like that. Let's see, there's 2 items here. All items indicated by an asterisk will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda unless a board member, county manager, or member of the public objects at the time the agenda item is called. Let's see, are there any items that anyone cares to pull? Seeing none, I ask, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve items A and B in the consent agenda for the Pinal County Flood Control District.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion's passed. Thank you. We adjourn the Flood Control District Board of Directors meeting, and we will now open. I love that. I get to open the Public Health Services Board of Directors meeting. And again, we have 5 items on this agenda, and all items indicated by an asterisk will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda unless a board member, county manager, or member of the public objects at the time the agenda item is called. Let's see. I've got a request by Supervisor Kavanaugh to pull item E. Is there any other? Am I missing something, Natasha? You're looking at me like I'm missing. Okay, good. All right, so do I have a motion for items A through E minus E?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve consent items A through D minus E on the Public Health Services District meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Those opposed? Hearing none, motions are approved. Mr. Kavanaugh, item E.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any person from Public Health? Oh, I see. Dr. Spears.
Good morning, Chairman McClure, Vice Chair Surtee, Supervisors here with the board. Good morning, Tasha Spears, Public Health.
Thank you, Dr. Spears. I have a couple of questions with respect to this grant. Could you give us, number one, a broad overview? It's about $500,000, and the number of persons expect to be impacted by the grant. To start with, those 2 questions.
Certainly. So this particular grant was approved by this board on August the 4th. So this particular grant was to work with a community partner, namely Pinal Hispanic Council, to offer culturally sound and linguistically sound educational materials in our communities, and those materials were with respect to mitigation procedures and prevention of COVID-19. This particular amendment that is before the board is simply the portion of $10,000 that had previously been allocated to the University of Arizona to develop educational materials. The university let us know that with that minimal amount of funding, they would prefer to have us develop our own materials, and we also have some of those developed already. Since that time, we actually hired a student intern that had been with us from the University of Arizona who had developed those materials. And so this is simply a redirection of $10,000, and it actually ended up being $14,282 redirected to our own personnel EREs. Because when we initially applied for this grant, which was approved by the board and accepted in August, and we have been working with Pinal Hispanic since that time, we had not applied for the EREs at that time. So this is simply a redirection in a grant that we've been working collaboratively with Pinal Hispanic on since August.
And forgive me, I can't get into the live Novus agenda, but I think it said something about a scientifically accurate message or a truthful message. We approved this back in August, and the truth may have changed a little bit since then. So we had COVID the shot will prevent people from getting COVID and transmitting it, and that's kind of gone away. And then Mr. Revelis reminded me that they've said now the masks aren't good unless they're a KN95. Is that part of the messaging that's going to go into this?
Chairman McClure, Supervisor Kavanaugh. Yes, certainly as things change, and respectfully to everyone, many people say the truth which time as we move forward and as information changes over time. In general, the information that is shared with the community is the information put forth by the CDC, as well as links to other scientific journals, such as research that's published in various medical journals, information that's provided by the American Pediatric Association, American Medical Association. So for just a very brief example, as things changed with regard to recommendations for how long one would be in isolation or in quarantine, that's the type of information that's shared.
Okay. So the Pinal Hispanic Council has a very good reputation in the community. And so my only concern is that if we're developing a message that then their clients later find out is inaccurate, I want to make sure we preserve, and maybe that's a conversation we can have later, the county's reputation in delivering correct information to disseminate with them. So,
yes, and certainly, I think it's very important whenever information is provided, either by public health or with regard to sharing information regarding COVID, I think it's critical that we always indicate the source of that information. So if the source is the CDC, then certainly we indicate that. If the source is the American Pediatric Association or some other source, it's critical that we cite those sources and that people have the opportunity to actually go back to a source document and be able to review that for themselves.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Miller.
Not necessarily a question. I just think, and I mentioned this last time we discussed the COVID, and Dr. McIsaac, before you, confirmed this with me. COVID is never, ever going to be eradicated from this earth. It is here to stay. It is something we all have to learn to live with. I hope that's in the pamphlet. I mean, I think it has to. Really, the truth to society is this is never going away. There's no silver bullet. There's nothing. And so we all have to learn how to live with it. Whatever your comfort level is what you're going to have to learn to deal with. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. The gain of function that they did to this virus, and you can blame whoever you want with that. I got my ideas, but that gain of function has created a monster that will mutate faster than we can think. And it's mutating today. There's probably a dozen different variants that are already out there floating around. So, and COVID was here long before this hit. I mean, we've dealt with it in the livestock industry forever. So some version of it, some type of it is here forever. And best of luck, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I editorialized. That really wasn't a question.
We would expect nothing less from you. All right, so we have any other discussion? Do I have a motion on item E?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve item E as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, look at that. Okay, it's like stereo. Right now. So, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion approved. Thank you very much, Dr. Spears. All right, and with that, I will adjourn the Public Health Services District Board, and we will reconvene the Board of Supervisors regular meeting with number 9. Sounds like a song somewhere. Okay, number 9. So let's see, there is one item on this particular agenda. Does anyone like to pull this? No? Excellent. Okay, so I would, let's see. So, Mr. Evan, I hate to, Evangelopoulos, are you there? Evan, are you here? You're not here.
I saw him earlier.
He was here. Oh, there he is. Come on down. What's the price of this Chevy Nova, 1978?
Hi. Mr. Chair, Board of Supervisors, good morning.
Morning.
I'm here to present Titan Power Rentals in Oracle, Arizona. And this was a case that was heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission a couple of months ago. It's PZ 01021. And landowner is Sarkon Investments and Sarah Conway, applicant. It was zoned GR long time ago. As you probably know, the town of Oracle has lots of, the zoning is very old, the parceling is very old also. So there's conflicts with the current code. And this is right there on a major intersection of American Avenue and East Mount Lemmon Highway. And there's so many other commercial parcels over there. This, for some reason, remained as residential GR. So the applicant was trying to update it to C3 commercial. And that's what we went through with the Planning and Zoning Commission. There was also an issue with the parceling in a way. There was a minor land division or minor land combination that had to occur there. And that was one of the stipulations in the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, that in order for this item to proceed to the Board of Supervisors, that the minor land division combination had to be fully submitted, we said, but right now it's fully complete. So although in the Planning and Zoning Commission we had 4 stipulations, the first one is complete, has been satisfied, so therefore we're submitting this with 3 stipulations, the 3 remaining ones. Okay, so Located, I mentioned, at the intersection. It's exactly at the intersection of East American Avenue and East Mount Lemmon Highway in Oracle. This is Oracle. Everybody knows where it is, I guess. There is the property. There's the area map, all the parcels. It's moderate low density residential in the comprehensive plan. Current zoning is general rural. Proposed zoning is C3, general commercial.
Not to interrupt you, but this was the old grocery store in town, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So it's been commercial for a long time in a way, but it was under GR. This is the old zoning map and parceling map from, I don't remember the exact date right now, but it's been there for a long time. And these are the only documents of that we have. So, an aerial photograph. Another one from the old maps. This is a view of the site right now, looking north. This is a more recent photograph. You see the rental, a couple of the rental vehicles there in the back. This is looking south. That's the Mount Lemmon Highway, where it intersects with American Avenue. This is looking east on a cloudy day. This is looking west on the same cloudy day. This is the site plan as it was submitted, and there's a stipulation regarding site plan submittal. So, items for board consideration. The land use request is for rezoning. To date, one letter in opposition has been received. The property has legal access. The subject property is located within the moderate low-density residential, 1.3.5 development units per acre. And the comprehensive plan clearly states commercial uses are allowed anywhere with consideration of compatibility with surrounding land uses, where a commercial use is less than 25 acres. A site plan submittal will be required. These are the part of the stipulations. A site plan submittal will be required only in case of on-site business-related building expansion. And all applications addressing a site plan-related minor land division, minor land combination have been satisfactorily submitted, what I mentioned earlier, and approved by Pinal County before the case was forwarded to the Board of Supervisors. So approval with 3 stipulations, and these are the 3 stipulations. Shall require specific site plan submittal only in case of the present building expansion or if other structures within the property are utilized for commercial purposes. Should the existing use expand beyond into the other existing structures not currently used, typical traffic impact analysis may be required to be submitted to the county engineer at the time of the site plan submittal. And the third one, that's the basic stipulation that applies to most zoning cases. So that's it.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
This has a public hearing component to it. Is there anyone from the public that cares to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing, I'll close the public hearing. There we go. Okay. So, let's see. So, is there a motion to approve this item?
Mr. Chairman, I have to declare a conflict.
So,
okay.
So, Mr. Chair, with that, I'll make a motion that we approve item number A as presented with all the stipulations.
With all stipulations, is there a second?
As stated.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion moves. Is approved. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And just for clarification purposes, Supervisor Kavanaugh had, explained to me a potential conflict. I recommended to him that he declare a conflict on this, and as a follow-up to that, if you would just put that in writing so that the clerk has that for the record for the file.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Moving along, item number 10. We have a public hearing on, let's see, substantial amendment to the fiscal year 19 to 23 consolidated plan. Ms. Patel, good afternoon, or morning still, again.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman McClure. Supervisors, Heather Patel again with Finance. This item before you today is a change in our 5-year consolidated plan and our annual action plan for the use of our community development block grant funds. If we make what they consider to be a substantial change, we have to have a public hearing and then submit the required documentations to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The substantial changes before you today, when we received our CDBG CV, or the coronavirus funding, we had identified a project. Since that time, we have opted to change that project and move it to the Arizona City Library Expansion Project. And we also need to sort of declare our change in our relationship with the City of Maricopa. So under the CDBG program, we are required to invite all of our local governments to participate in our program versus the state's program. And Maricopa has been our partner, but there has been a slight change where they have now reached the required population numbers to do their own CDBG program, but they still wanted to stay with us to assist in that program. So it was just more of a clarification on that. They will be able to receive their full allocation as if they were their own CDBG program. And we will just be providing some administrative support. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had any.
Any questions? Very good. All right. Then with that, I will open the public hearing on this item. Are there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I would ask for a motion on item 10.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 10 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes, or item passes. Thank you. Let's see, item number 11. Discussion approval for creation of a grade 5 heavy equipment operator trainee classification for use by Public Works. Mr. Ortiz, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, I guess.
Oh, no, it's 11:10. I'm watching the
Okay,
clock.
all right, we'll take that. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is, but Chairman, Vice Chair, Board of Supervisors, Joe Ortiz, Pinal County Public Works Deputy Director. I'm here to speak on behalf of item 11. As you mentioned, it is a request from Public Works Department to create a grade 5 heavy equipment operator trainee classification. This request will be funded solely by highway user revenue funds. There are no impacts to general fund. And this is basically the first step in an overall comprehensive plan to assist with issues of recruitment and retention within specifically our operator series within our maintenance and construction operations. As part of this overall comprehensive plan, we've been working very diligently with Mary Ellen HR, County Manager's Office for some time now, and in hopes to get these positions in line with current market and also to hopefully define a clear path for growth and advancement within those operator series positions. The hope is to not make these just a job, but hopefully get a career path for these individuals. So in creating these, we're not asking for additional bodies. All we're asking for is to restructure and redefine the current operator positions. And it's probably best to give you a quick background on how Public Works and our whole operator series program works. Currently, we have approximately 133, either right now it's classified as operator. We also have classifications of operator seniors, and we also have individuals in the supervisory role as a highway assistant foreman, highway foreman, and then a couple of superintendents. So, as I mentioned, this is part of our maintenance side of the world. We have 7 maintenance facilities throughout Pinal County, and those maintenance facilities have, majority of them are operators, senior operators currently, and we also have a highway assistant, one highway assistant foreman and a foreman assigned to each of those yards. The way they operate is first thing in the morning, there's approximately 12 to 15 of those team members out there. The way they operate, the assistant foreman and foreman will get their team together first thing in the morning, and they'll assign approximately 4 to 5 small projects. They'll get them lined out, be it sweeping, grading roads, watering roads, potholes, whatever the case may be, and then they'll divide those teams into teams of 3 to 5. Right now, they kind of informally ask one of those senior operators to, hey, it's your role, responsibility to make sure that field team successfully fulfills the duties, either making sure the work zone traffic control is set, make sure there's no other safety issues involved, make sure we get the material, the correct material, and take care of the whole operation from field to finish. So like I said, that's kind of informally how that works. Technically, right now, it's tough for an operator senior to move into those roles of supervision of highway assistant foreman because there's no real bridge to those two roles. So that's kind of one of the issues we're trying to correct. The other side of the fence is on our construction side of the world, where we have 5 construction teams out there that build roads like Mountain View and take care of our ARDPs, install culverts, cattle guards, more of the construction side of things, not necessarily maintenance. And in that side of the world, yes, they do also break down into teams, and they do ask some of these operator seniors to take lead field type of roles. But these are even highly skilled individuals that they're the skilled of the skilled as far as our heavy equipment goes. Our 4 main, what we call yellow iron, our dozers, our graders, backhoes, loaders, those type of equipments. These guys are the skilled of the skilled because they actually have to not only, like on the maintenance side of the world, I hate to say just because they do what a great, valid job, the important role. But on the construction side, they actually have to take a look at a set of construction plans and build it per plan. They have to actually set grade and cut it to grade. They have to actually process material to make sure we get compaction. They have to order materials. They have to calculate quantities, those type of things. So they're a little more on the higher skilled area of, it's more of a senior skilled plus some lead operations. So with that in mind, what we would like to do is, like I said, currently we have just an operator and we have a senior operator and then assistant foreman, and a superintendent. We'd like to create this operator trainee position to make it, one, so we can open and give us a little more flexibility on bringing employees in that may not have any true skill set, allow us to train these individuals, allow us to get them their certification as far as a CDL driver, and then hopefully get that role into within this 1 year span to make it similar to what cadets do from PCSO, where they basically, as long as they check off these boxes and we get them certified, it should be a non-competitive promotion into the next role, which we're trying to get corrected into a high, heavy construction, or equipment operator, heavy equipment operator.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor.
Joe, I don't want to ruin your train of thought, but do we have problems competing against the private sector?
Most definitely.
I would hate to see us train people and then have them, then lose them into, the outside world.
That's actually what's happening right now. We do train these individuals, and they are leaving to private sector. We just aren't competitive enough from a salary standpoint to make that leap. But we're hoping that this might give more of a career path, an advancement program, so they can see, okay, we can come in as a heavy equipment operator trainee. Within that 1 year, we'll get you certified, and that will automatically put you into a heavy equipment operator. And then that's the big one is creating these or correcting these heavy equipment operator lead seniors. That's the key to this. If we can get it to that point, we can actually get them a pathway to go from operator to a supervisor. And it corrects that issue that we're doing right now, where we're asking these guys to go out into the field and be these lead field guys, but they're not getting compensated for it. So we hopefully get them compensated for that, taking that additional role.
Thanks.
And one more question here.
Sure.
Joe. We've got Supervisor.
More of a comment than anything else, I think, is that, any good business sense is that you cross-train in any of your areas. I was at a function here a week ago where Governor Ducey, somebody had made the comment about where they're having a difficult time, especially in the construction field, filling some of these truck driver positions and things of that nature. And Ducey made an interesting comment, and I think Supervisor Kavanaugh alluded to that. We're at an all-time low as far as unemployment right now in the state of Arizona. And what's some of the issues are is we don't have enough of these qualified individuals. And where you're talking about with the training program and cross-training and giving the skill sets to a lot of our employees, I think it's a great idea. So I support this 100%.
Yeah, you are correct. That's kind of our hope, is to get these guys to buy into Pinal County by, hey, look, we can offer you this, we can get you trained up, and there is a pathway for advancement as well. It's kind of the whole comprehensive plan. Just a couple other items. Like I said, the role or the goal is, once we get hopefully our heavy equipment operator lead seniors in play, and hopefully, like I said, our game plan is hopefully to try to promote from within. Once that happens, there may be some equity issues that we may have to take a look at as far as our leads versus our assistant foreman and foreman and superintendent. But we really won't know that until we start putting this in play, and then we can actually get some true numbers to see how much of an impact that is. But in our due diligence, we did do some reviews, and we did take a worst-case scenario of assuming we were able to promote from within all these higher-paid level operator seniors, and they did advance to lead, and we did do some improvements for assistant foreman, and superintendent. And we're okay with our budget. We do have the budget capacity within the HERF to implement the entire plan if we were able to get it to that point. So Any other questions?
Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Joe. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 11 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Item number 12, discussion, approval, disapproval of a claim for payment of contract Public Defense Counsel, John Schaus. Schaus. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman and Supervisors. I'm Kathy Whalen with Public Defense Services, and we're requesting that you pay this bill or permit me to pay this bill to Mr. Schaus. He is a longtime contractor with Pinal County for years when the court was managing the contract. More recently, as you know, you developed the Office of Public Defense Services, and we took over the contract in July of last year. And one of the things we learned was that there were some outstanding bills. This one in particular from Mr. Schaus comes at a time that is substantially farther out than we're permitted to pay. The statute says that that a contractor needs to bill within 6 months of completing services. Some of these services were provided as early as 2016. But we do believe that he has provided those services satisfactorily to the court and to his clients. We worked with the court to verify the bills that he presented. One of the reasons I think you created the Office of Public Defense Services is to create a situation where we'd be in position to better scrutinize the bills that come through from contractors and vendors and other folks related to public defense services. We have looked at Mr. Schaus's bills and believe that he has certainly provided all the services and that he has not been paid for them to date. It's my understanding that, so at this point, he's essentially presenting us with a claim. And in speaking with Mr. Keller, it's my understanding that if we chose not to pay this, that we just go down a path of him presenting this county with a claim, everyone get lawyers, we might have to pay for a lawyer, and probably what the court would ask is, did you get the services? Did he provide, what he's telling you? And we would probably be directed to pay it anyways. So we're asking that you approve us to pay the bill.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Supervisor Goodman.
Oh, I
can see you in the corner of my eye.
Well, thank you, Mr. I just want to make sure that I'm very clear about this. Our position is that we owe the money.
Yes.
Okay.
And services have been provided.
Yes. Yeah. And we have made it very clear moving forward to all contractors, and especially Mr. Schaus, that we won't be paying any bills that are outside of the statutory guidelines in the future.
Mr. Keller.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, it was on my recommendation to Ms. Whalen that we bring this to the board to publicly let the other contractors, Public Defense Counsel, know that they need to get their bills into us timely. This is not an easy thing for Mr. Schaus to go through. It's additional hurdles that have to be met, that have to go through, get on the board agenda, get it approved, get it explained, why they were late. We did receive a letter from him indicating that, and Ms. Whalen's office verified all those. But it was on that kind of a recommendation. I said, you need to get the word out. This is one good way to get the word out to other counsel that we need your bills timely, that you don't want to be submitting them after 6 months' time like you may have done with the court before. They didn't have that process. We do, though.
Did you get it in writing?
Yes. And if I could add, the board has also approved the purchase of a new case management system for public defense services where we will be in a position to track the cases assigned, what work's happening on them, and be able to see if something is closed and hasn't been billed. So we're going to be in a much better position to track this stuff moving forward, and I'm confident that the contractors understand the situation at this point.
Everyone take heed.
Correct.
All right. Okay. So do I have okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Do I have a motion on item 12?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve item 12 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. I would like to have a 5-minute recess. Is everyone good for that?
Sure. Yeah.
Recess for 5 minutes. Superior Court applying for the case backlog grant. Court commissioners and all that. Mr. Zweig, good morning. Still, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I am Todd Zweig. I'm the Superior Court Administrator. This item was continued from our last board meeting, and I wanted to provide a little bit more information today, but the request is for authorization to apply for a case backlog grant that comes through the American Rescue Plan Act and is funneled through our Supreme Court. Funds will be used to help pay for cases that either happened during the pandemic or became, I guess for lack of a better word, stale during the pandemic. It's not for positions, it's for a funding source that will be used on a reimbursement basis. So if we use a judge that comes in from somewhere else for a specific purpose, mainly for probably settlement conferences, we'll be able to use this money as opposed to using county money. So the request is to be able to apply for that money. So the question I was asked was, well, how big is your backlog? Why did your backlog happen? And I tried to provide, or at least I provided maybe a visual representation of why and what that looks like. And if you pull up, it's on the items, but I have hard copies here. I'll wait till you get the copy.
Oh, yeah.
So if you haven't had a chance to look at this, if you look at this, what we talked about is how backloads can happen and how the pandemic has affected it. So we talked about jury trials and how jury trials, there's kind of a pressure on the system, and it's pressure for cases to kind of resolve, because if there's not a jury trial scheduled, cases can last or languish for a long time. So if you look at the criminal jury trials that I handed you, you'll see that when the pandemic started, and it's represented by the gold or the yellow line, that criminal jury trials pretty much stopped in April. They started again in September, and they kind of went up and down, and that was mainly because of what was happening with COVID and the outbreak. If you look at the green line, which is 2021, you can kind of see the same thing, how we were doing a very small amount and then none, and then we were doing a few and then none. And if you look at the graph below it, you can see that for 2017, 18, and 19, there was an average of 64 felony jury trials, and in 2020, there were only 19, and in 2021, 31. So during that time is when the backlog really began. Now, if you look at felony filings on the graph below that, someone like me, when we look at filings and terminations, what is very important to me is what's called the clearance rate, and that is the difference between how many cases are coming in compared to how many cases are getting resolved. So if I see a number of around 100% or above 100%, well, that's great news. Above 100% means we're resolving more cases than we're taking in through the front door. So that's pretty much what happened in 2016 through 2019, and then you hit 2020, and you see it drop to 88%. And you can see the difference between filings and terminations, and that's when the backlog really began. So between not having the jury trials, or as many as we usually have, and not being able to resolve cases, which are both intertwined, that's where the backlog comes from. And I'm hoping this is more of a visual representation, better than what I tried to explain a couple weeks ago.
I'm seeing a question from Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And not really a question, Mr. Zweig. I just want, I had some people from the courts contact me, and this is a better explanation. This graph is of good information, kind of gives a visual, and I appreciate that. But I think one of the comments I made was these positions get filled and they never get relinquished. and they always seem to linger on. And I thought it's kind of interesting, on January 18th, the Casa Grande Dispatch, Coconino County hires judge help with backlog of cases, which is, okay, kind of what we're dealing with, right? Similar?
Yes and no. They hired a judge
Okay.
full-time. This is just on a reimbursement.
But they say that they're using the COVID money to
Sure.
to fill the position now.
Sure.
And the very last sentence, I said, and when the money runs out, we'll make this position full-time. And that's the part that always kinds of gets to me, because in our case, I would say when the money runs out, we won't be able to continue those positions. And that's
Understood.
really kind of just the point I was trying to make. And again, though, I compliment you on this graphic. This helps understand the situation on your caseload. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor.
I don't know, there's a question in there, but that's my
Thank you.
statement.
Are there other questions or comments? Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do appreciate the graphic, and I think this is kind of a model with someone requests funding. This is a good model for them to use, so I thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Other comments or discussion? In that case, do I have a motion for item 13?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we would approve item 13 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
Mr. Zweig, appreciate it. We have item number 14, and I understand that Supervisor Goodman would like to request an E-session for this item.
Yes. I would like to make a motion that we go into E-session. There's some legal questions that I just need some.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those that would care to, do we have to?
Yeah.
Those, let's see, we have a motion and a second to go into E-session. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Here. Those opposed? No. Hearing none, off to E-session. All right, we are back in session. Like that. All right. So, item number 14, discussion, approval, disapproval of the recommendation by the Justice of the Peace Selection Committee to appoint Daniel Hughes as Pinal County Justice of the Peace, Precinct Number 3, to fill the remainder of the term left by the resignation of Justice of the Peace Brett Isley. Daniel Hughes will serve in this appointed position effective January 22, 2022 through December 31st, 2022.
So, Mr. Chair.
You may.
Okay. If I could have counsel come up and kind of give us the parameters. If we don't make a decision today, what does that do? Those type of, from the legal perspective. And one question that I've had that I would like to know, or even be brought out into the public, what if is there a possibility that we can continue on with pro tem in that position? Because it is an election year. And just in a few months, we're going to have an election for that position. So anyway, if you could talk to that, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Ken Volkmer, Pinal County Attorney. There's a series of questions, so I'm going to try and take them in turn, and if I miss one, just yell at me, and I'll be happy to go back. To answer your first question, legally what happened is our current elected JP, Brett Isley, put in his notice. So effective January 22nd, he is resigning, which means that position is open. The agenda item today is to replace Judge Isley with Daniel Hughes. If this board adopts and approves that agenda item, Mr. Hughes would become Judge Hughes in just a couple of days. If this board chooses not to pass this agenda item, what would happen is the board would have not fulfilled that position by that January 22nd date, and by law we can't have nobody in that position. There must be somebody. So it would become incumbent upon our presiding judge of the Superior Court, Rudy Giorgini, to appoint a pro tem or an interim justice of the peace. The board could set a future agenda item in a week, 2 weeks, a month, whenever, and make a formal appointment. And if this board makes that formal appointment, it would supersede that appointment done by Judge Giorgini. If this board chooses not to appoint anyone, the appointment that Judge Giorgini makes would run until the election.
Okay.
And I know you had another question, and I apologize.
No. Well, I guess what it pertains to is that it is, because one of the things that I'm looking at is, number one is because it is so close to the election, but the other part for me is that are we required statutorily to put somebody in that position? And if we could use a pro tem between now and then, that saves us as a county EREs and things of that nature. But based on what you just said, that appointment will come from the judge, the presiding judge, correct? Or
Chair,
a pro temp will be put in there.
Chair, I need to correct a couple things that Supervisor Goodman said just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Absolutely.
It's not going to save us any money because that appointment or that money is statutorily set. So whether you appoint it or Judge Giorgini sets it, there will be a person in that position. They will have EREs. They will be compensated.
Okay.
This actually happened, I believe, Miss Ellie Brown, Judge Brown, filled in when we had Miss Judge Nancy Disher resign. So that interim period that she filled in before the board appointed Judge Lujan, she was compensated at the regular rate. So it's not this. I don't want the board to believe that there's a financial savings because I don't believe that that's really a fair assessment to make. However, there is an obligation that somebody be in that board or in that position. It's this board's responsibility first to make that appointment. If this board doesn't, for whatever reason, then the responsibility falls to the presiding judge. This board at any time can come back and fill that position or can choose not to. That's entirely with you, but there has to be somebody filling that position. You have first priority to make that appointment. If you don't, then Judge Giorgini would fill in the interim. Would make an appointment to fill into the interim. It would not be him personally.
Okay, but if I might, but to continue on with that, is that at some point, say in a month or two, we decide, okay, let's get somebody in there. That supersedes what our presiding judge does, correct?
Yes, if you want to think it in a authority, you have a higher authority to make that appointment. So if at a point this board comes together and says this is who we think should be there, at any time you can do that.
Okay, all right.
Let me clarify. Once you make the appointment, you can't come back in 2 months and say I don't like that appointment and appoint somebody else in there. You get one shot at it, though.
We can't go above our own power.
But once you make the appointment, that's it.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's where, okay.
Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I don't have a lot of questions about the process that County Attorney Volkmer just went over. I think what concerns me in this whole thing has been, I guess, the process that we ended up using where it was just the two supervisors reviewing. And at last check on my part, last time I checked, there were only 2 applicants. I thought, well, that's not too much, there's only 2 applicants. Well, I understand now there were like 6 applicants.
There were 6 applicants.
6 applicants, which I didn't know. And I guess, the horse has already left the barn because I think in any of these appointments that the whole board should review all the applicants, even if it's just in a public hearing. I wish there would have been a little more transparency on all the applicants. I don't know who the other 6 applicants were, or who the 6 applicants were, but because I'd like to have seen all that was available for it. So I don't know. I wish we had a little different system. That's hindsight, which is 20/20 all the time. But we'll worry about that the next time we have to make an appointment. This is the same
system we used for.
Oh, and I don't disagree that.
And
I don't disagree. And I guess as I think about it and understand it better, I think maybe there's a better way to go about it in the future.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
Thank you.
You're going to do it anyway, so go ahead.
No, I wouldn't. I would respect you. The thing is that, and to go along with what Supervisor Miller's talking about, we did have the process, and look what's happened right now. We have a court that's had some issues. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a resignation, number one. And so there's some processes here. But this particular court covers 4 districts. And this is the part that, to go along with what Supervisor Miller is talking about, is that this decision is by all 5 of us that we should need to be making so that we can, whatever issues or anything else of that nature is that. You know, I personally want to feel like I know of 2 other applicants that were on that, and it was when I saw that the change of the agenda actually had chosen and was recommending Mr. Hughes, and I don't even know Mr. Hughes very well at all. I think I've met him once. He's probably the great guy, and he probably could do a bang-up job. But for me personally, there's some issues in this court that need to be addressed, and I'm not so sure with all the other applicants because, again, we weren't part of that process, that I would like to have the opportunity to weigh in on that. That's where I'm at. Because there is 4 districts that are affected by this one court.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kavanaugh.
Are you done, Mr. Goodman?
Yeah.
So we talk about the process. This was noticed a couple of months ago. So if we had more than 2 supervisors, wouldn't that present a conflict as well? Because we would be in violation of public meeting laws if we had interviews in private among.
Actually, we can make that public.
Yeah.
It's if I might, Mr. Chair. I think those. Am I wrong in that, Council? Is that something that we could have done more in a public setting?
Mr. Chairman, supervisors, I mean, there are multiple ways you could have gone ahead and approached this. If you remember back to your open position for the LD positions,
right.
You brought candidates in and you had a series of questions that the board then vetted with those people, and then you deliberated, if you will, in doing that. So, I mean, there's multiple different ways you can do it.
Okay.
And also on that, being a quorum, we could only ask one of the 2. I came down here this morning to try to ask. I had 2 choices if I talked to both of you. So I don't know what both of you were feeling and what you saw in those interviews either. So having the whole board would have been useful that way. I echo a lot of the sentiments that Mr. Miller brought up, and I think it's still your time.
Right. Okay. So thank you. So the chairman and I met with a couple of applicants. We reviewed all the applicants. Unbeknownst to each other, we both did the same thing. We scored the applicants numerically, and we came up with the top 2 who we felt were the top 2 candidates. That was the process we took, and we did interviews. And I think going into it, maybe we had our favored candidate, and going out of it, maybe we were a little surprised by our eventual decision. But I think we arrived at the best decision, and that is Mr. Dan Hughes, considering all the factors. And had you been in the interviews, and maybe the chairman would like to speak to it, you likely would have come to the same conclusion.
No, thank you, Supervisor. I think it's always hard to choose from well-qualified candidates, and we did score, and we did come up with the same numbers, almost exactly. And so we decided to choose to interview the top 2, and we went through, and it wasn't personal, it wasn't political, it was a business decision based on who we felt fit the mold of the judge for the rest of this term.
And Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes.
So to your point, Supervisor Kavanaugh, it would have been nice I believe, just based on what we just heard here, all 3 of us would have appreciated to be a part of some of that so that we can make our own judgments in regards to this, because it is an important position that's being filled. They're having to go in and do some things, and so I'm being asked to make a decision on something that I never was part of the process, and that would have been awesome for me to be a part of the process and be able to see Mr. Hughes rise to the top in that process. But I wasn't privy to that. And so one of the things that I'm looking at that I would like to see us do is actually redo the process and have some open interviews, much like what we did with our legislative representatives that we chose.
Mr. Chairman. And
Supervisor Sherry.
I would have had questions like, this is only for a matter of a few months. With the election coming up, why does this person not choose to do this? Why does he not think it important enough to run again? So I think that would have been something people would have liked to have an answer to as well.
If I might, my understanding is he's not running. And so, but we were told that before, that he wasn't going to run. And he turned around and ran. And so that's part of, but again, that's water under the bridge, because like Supervisor Kavanaugh said, as you guys went through the process, you saw him rise to the top. And personally, I would like to be able to be in that kind of a position, especially something that's so of importance, and that with some issues that we have already in a court that needs to be addressed, I would like to be part of the interview process so that I can be a part of that scoring process. And I'm hearing that Supervisor Miller, even Supervisor Surtee, feels the same way. So that's where I'm at, and based on what legal has just told us, even if we don't meet the deadline by the 22nd, the Superior Court will appoint somebody to fill that position to make sure all the I's are dotted and everything's done while we revamp this process. And even this is where I'm headed with a motion that I would eventually want to make, is that we revamp the process and we go through an interview process publicly where all 5 of us could actually be a part of that process and see whatever individual is going to rise to the top. So I would like to be afforded that same opportunity that you two had.
But if I may, Mr. Chairman, what prevented you from making that request at the time that we knew we were going to have to fill this position?
Well, Mr. Chair, if I might.
Certainly.
I didn't expect to come in here with a specific name in the process here that you were going to recommend. And so, and knowing one or two of the other individuals that actually put an application, I'm not so sure Mr. Hugh is the right guy to go in there and clean up what needs to be cleaned up and be able to get the court running where it needs to run. So quite honestly, if you're asking me to be honest in this whole scenario, I'm not comfortable with the recommendation that you made. And I don't know Mr. Hughes, but I would love the opportunity to get to know him before we make such a final decision, because whatever we decide is going to be final, and we can't go back on that.
And to your point, during the interview process, Mr. Hughes articulated in great specificity what he would do, in right down to the language on form. So I don't know if it would be appropriate, Mr. Chairman, for at this point to have Mr. Hughes give some explanation to and maybe legal counsel that can advise to give Mr. Goodman and Mr. Miller a comfort level with this candidate.
Mr. Keller.
Mr. Chairman, supervisors, you have the ability to, ask and bring the candidate up and ask questions. Excuse me. The only thing I would caution you about, and it's not it's not legally, but it's more of a process that, should you, ask these questions, and then you have a decision to go forward and bring other candidates in, because you don't make a decision today and you want to do that, you may then have given those other candidates an advantage of, if you ask the same type of questions, not knowing what your questions are going to be. I can't answer that, but yes, you definitely have the ability to go ahead and ask those questions before you make your decision in the vote today.
Okay, thank you. Clarify, Mr. Volkmer, if the decision is made not to go forward here, Judge Giuliani will appoint someone, and then we have the option in the future to appoint another person. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that is accurate. He would appoint on a temporary basis a person to fill that pending a final decision of the board.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I might, and it's nothing against Mr. Hughes, it's just the process itself where I have some issues. And because part of my district does include who's going to be representing that court, and I'm not speaking for Supervisor Miller, and he could say the same, I still would like to be a part of the process of even hearing some of the other candidates and be able to score it, much like what you two did. Well, so again, that's what I'm after.
This goes back to the process that we set up for JP5. And then Chairman Miller said, hey, go forth and do this. So that's what we did. But you want to change that process now?
I would like to, yes.
Is Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't know if you have a recollection, perhaps one of the other supervisor does, in the appointment of Judge Eisel, that was an appointment. What was the process like for Mr. Eisel?
Isley?
Isley. Forgive me.
It was the same process that we're in right now. But let's be very clear here. Part of our problem is that we've got issues with this court. And so to me, and all five of us were making a decision on Judge Isley, if we'd have had more of an open forum and an interview process, much like what we did with our legislators, I don't think we'd be sitting here right now in the scenario that we're in. And so that's why I really believe it should be in a public setting where these guys come in and do it, to where we all five can weigh in with questions, scoring systems, whatever. That's what I would prefer to see happen moving forward on this one. You know, we make mistakes, but we learn from them. And I'm suggesting that we learn from it and we move forward in a more open forum for the public's sake so they can actually see what's going on. That's what I'm recommending that we do.
Is there any other discussion?
Just,
Mr. Miller.
Just the appointment of Mr. Isley was in replacement of Mr. Shope, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and Mr. Shope decided to step down, and I don't even remember how many districts that was, because that was pre-redistricting of the JPs, if I remember right. Then in this case, and this is, again, hindsight, this particular appointment impacts 4 districts rather than just 2. When Nancy Disher stepped down was simply 2 districts, and this is over 4 districts, and we probably should have thought through that a little bit more. However, I think the 2 districts that were represented, McClure and Kavanaugh's, were probably the highest populated. I think is kind of where that discussion. That's where that discussion came from. But anyway, so I take it this is a list of the applicants.
List of the applicants, yes.
Okay.
So we've had discussion. For item 14, is there a motion?
I would move that we would approve, Mr. Chairman, item number 14 as presented.
Is there a second? Not hearing a second, the motion is failed. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Then item 15 is a discussion of having the county create a $100,000 contingency fund or other appropriate account to be available for reimbursement of PCSO costs for protecting the border is what we're talking about here. Is this Mr. Volkmer? Mr. Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I presented this item for discussion and eventual approval. We did not get all the language put together today, but as you heard in Governor Ducey's recent State of the State address, both this governor and others are putting together packages and procedures to protect the border. And so not knowing he was going to do that, knowing the border security is important, I've asked that we set aside a $100,000 contingency fund, and that would permit the sheriff to respond to requests for assistance in securing our border. And this would pay for, as the item says, EREs, travel, housing, overtime, and so on related to the cost of protecting the border. And perhaps County Attorney Volkmer could explain what we can and cannot do. And thank you, Mr. Volkmer.
Mr. Volkmer.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Pinal County Attorney Kent Volkmer. Yes, when Supervisor Kavanaugh brought this idea to me and said, hey, I'd really like to get this as an agenda item, I had an opportunity to speak with county management, the rest of the legal team, and there's a lot of moving parts to get this done. It's not as easy as, in our world, if we just want to move money from our savings to our checkbook, we just write a check. This requires budget amendments, and there are a lot of various moving parts. If this is something the board is inclined to do, what I would ask is that the board give staff direction to bring a formal action item, probably in about 2 weeks, where we can make the appropriate budgetary amendments. I know Ms. Woods was here earlier. I'm sure she's listening. I know county management's aware of this as well. So there is a process to get done. It's just not as easy as snapping our fingers, which is why I suggested that we come before the board here to get your explicit direction. And again, the idea behind this is we don't want our men and women who serve honorably be deployed or be essentially conscripted to go somewhere and then potentially not get paid. Obviously, our intention would be to go back after the governor if the governor says you will go do this. But in the meantime, I don't think our people should go without and not be compensated. So this would allow us to bridge that gap while we ensured that they got compensated.
If that were the case, would not the entity that moves them to the border have a payment plan for that and say, we'll move you there and we would get paid possibly in the future, but this would be more like a reimbursement buffer? Is that fair to say?
Chair, that's accurate. The concern is if there is an emergency or a crisis and they say get people there, knowing our sheriff, knowing the men and women who serve for our community, they're going to go down there. And the problem is sometimes their actions are quicker than the bureaucrats paying them. So this is to make sure that there's not a bridge where they're doing work and not being compensated.
Fair enough. Okay. Is there any other conversation here?
No, I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that we look at. So,
okay. And I do have Mr. Noel Reck. Is that correct? I would like to speak to this item, Mr. Reck.
Good day, Supervisors. I'm Noel Reck from Casa Grande. First, I do agree with Supervisor Surdy that the Sheriff's Office was needed at the recent rally in the interest of public safety. I would suggest that an audit of expenses incurred by the county for that rally should be instituted to avoid being stiffed, as has been the case for so many other cities and counties where these rallies have been held. As for the $100,000 proposal for the Sheriff's Office mission to the border, I ask why? At whose suggestion? Whose request? This money could be used far more wisely right here in our own county to analyze and address the push-pull factors, both in general and in specific cases, that bring people to our border. Remember, the Irish didn't leave their homeland just for fun. They were pushed out and then pulled in, just like many on the border today. The immigration issue is a complex problem that won't be solved by a foray by the Sheriff's Office into Pima County for the benefit of the American Sheriff's Network, $4.99 a month. I'm sure there are many local agencies dealing firsthand with the issues involved that would love to partner with you and use this money in a far more productive manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? So we have the item. Is there a motion for this item? 14?
Mr. Chairman,
15.
This is for discussion purposes only.
Let's just, oh, good. Great. Then we won't have a motion. Okay.
Item 15.
Yeah, I did catch that. Thank you very much. Yes, okay. 15. This is discussion only. All right. Then moving on to number 16. Discussion of the board members' request for future agenda items. Are there any requests? Any requests for items?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Looks like a lot of them.
One moment. An agenda item for decision at our next regularly scheduled meeting would be a vote to rescind 032020-LSE, the emergency declaration that Pinal County entered into in 2020.
All right. Any others?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we item number 14, or pertaining to the justice of the peace, that we make that part of a discussion or the processes of where we go from here in appointing somebody for the precinct, filling the spot for Judge Isley.
A discussion item.
Or an action item as to what process we go forward, whether as an interview process or whatever the case may be. Right. But we have a discussion about how the process moving forward, because of what we do need to do is either let the court appoint that or we do it ourselves. But one thing that I would like to see us do is through an interview process openly with all 5 of us, like we did with the legislative one.
All right. Any other items?
I would also like to see item number 15, the one for the contingency plan suggested by Supervisor Kavanaugh, that we make that an action item on the next agenda.
All right. Other items? Anyone else? All right. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.